Hello and welcome to another episode of App Stories. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Vitici. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. Hi, how are you?
Doing all right. We had our first big cold snap of the winter here, so I've been bundled up and had the fire going in the fireplace. So, it's cozy here in North Carolina.
Nice. This is going to be our final episode of the year. I almost
Yes.
thought last week that it was going to be the final one. No, it's this one.
It is. It's hard to keep track because of the way we schedule the recording versus the releases and everything. But yes, this is our final episode of the year. We'll be gone for a couple of weeks, and then we will reconvene in the new year. So keep an eye out for the new episode early in January. We're just going to take some time off, decompress, unwind, spend time with family and friends, and then be back. And this week, though, I think, is going to be a contrast to last week. Last week, we talked about the AppStories Selects Awards, and we looked back. We looked back at the year gone by and the apps that we all used.
Yeah.
This week, we're going to look forward, and we're going to kind of a predictions episode, but more of a what are the trends we see going into the new year that we think are going to accelerate or persist or whatever, or what new ones do we think we'll see?
Yeah. We're going to look ahead at the what we think are going to be upcoming trends for 2026 in our community, in the tech world in general. And let's just get into it, I'm going to go first this time.
Okay.
And I think this is something that I hinted at when we did our episode on vibe coding a few weeks ago. I think in 2026 this trend will only continue, and I think we're gonna witness a few things happening. First of all, I think Google is gonna try and make a big push into sort of making vibe coding easier to use for people and for young developers. I think we will see in early 2026 a mobile version of Google AI Studio. And I think Google wants to be at the frontier of letting you build phone apps on your phone. I think that's going to be their thing. And maybe it's going to be more reliable. It's going to be more powerful on Android. I also think, though, they will have an iOS version of Google AI Studio. And I wouldn't be shocked if they're going to do something kind of similar to Swift Playgrounds, like on the iPad, where you can put together a little something and you can share it. I think Google is going to go a little beyond that. Maybe I can foresee some kind of like a web-based gallery or some built-in submission flow for the Google Play Store. I think they're going to try something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. A little bit like Claude Artifacts, but more.
But mobile apps.
Yeah, exactly. Not just web apps, but mobile apps. Yeah.
Yeah, and we are seeing some movement on this front already in December. Now that making nice looking web apps. I don't want to say that it's a solved problem, but modern LLMs are pretty good at it. And I think we're seeing how companies turn their attention to mobile UIs instead. Just yesterday, as we're recording this, Manus, which we mentioned a few weeks ago, they launched version 1.6 of their agent. And one of the features is creating mobile interfaces. So there's already a bit of movement on this front. I think it's only going to accelerate. And I mentioned Google, but I will also mention we will see third-party companies get into this action. We mentioned Wabi also a few weeks ago. This up and coming vibe coding platform with a social component where you can put together little custom UIs, share them with your friends. Your friends can remix those applications. I think there's gonna be a social component to this as well, like the modern version of sharing a meme, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
You put together something and then you share with your friend and your friend remixes it, something like that.
Yeah, there's going to be a whole, I think, ecosystem around this because obviously, especially if they're like web apps, you're going to need to host them somewhere. So I think you're going to see like web hosts start to cater to this sort of small artifact type things that are built and shared online in a way that those companies exist to do that on a much broader scale with bigger companies. I think that some of them will start focusing on individual projects more than they have in the past. I think that you're right. I mean, I think we're going to see just an absolute explosion of apps across the board because and it's gonna be across the spectrum. I think we're gonna see a lot of really bad, ill-conceived junk apps that are going to be all over the Play Store and the iOS App Store. But we're also going to see some of our favorite developers be able to iterate a lot faster as they develop and use these tools. Because one of the things I just was reading this morning was an article, a link post on Simon Wilson's blog about a developer who was explaining how it's actually better for companies to be hiring junior developers now than it ever has been, because tools like Claude and Codex and the like allow them to come up the learning curve much faster, which is something that you and I were talking about during our vibe coding episode. It's like, yeah, sure, you can truly vibe code something and not pay attention to what the output is, or you can follow along and you can learn something along the way. And I think that is going to be good for new developers, but it's also going to be very good for experienced developers who can move faster, where someone might be a solo developer will be essentially doing the work of maybe 2 or 3 people that they couldn't do before because they didn't have these tools.
Yeah. I think essentially my takeaway here is that apps will be the next type of user-generated content. Social media over the past decade and a half has all been about user-generated content. Pictures, videos, YouTube, Tumblr, right. Facebook, Instagram, obviously, Snapchat. Sure. And user-generated content means nothing, but also means everything. It takes many shapes and forms. And I think mobile software, will go through that phase in 2026. And that means a few things. I think it'll mean centralization. I think some of the big players will try to capitalize on this trend. There'll be startups. These startups will be acquired. The bigger companies that have app stores, so the incumbents in this case, will try and capitalize on this action. I think I wouldn't be shocked to see by the end of 2026 a vibe-coded category on the Google Play Store or on the App Store. Even more interesting as a hot take or as a prediction would be, imagine the App Store as a social network. It sounds maybe a little crazy now.
Ping 2.0.
I honestly do think we will see a social angle for the app stores in 2026.
Yeah, I could see that. I really could see that. I really think, as we mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago too, I think the idea of Swift Playgrounds becoming something where these things are built on Apple's platform just feels like a natural fit. And like they've got a head start on it. Why not take that? If they don't do that, I would be surprised and a little disappointed, because it seems like it's right there for the taking.
Yeah, so I think in general, software development, app development, vibe coding, it's all of these things are on both of our minds at the moment. And we think if you ask me, like, what is the first thing you think of for 2026, I think this is the one.
I think it's going to be the biggest one. I really do. Do.
But what else do you have, though?
So I have one. This is not too spicy, but I do think that Apple's starting to open up the iPhone to other wireless wearables like Wear OS smartwatches. That is going to, it'll depend on, how resistant Apple is to the change. But I could see that starting to open up and actually be a benefit to the iPhone in the long run, very much like it was when USB-C was adopted and all the accessories that were then enabled by that. And more recently, the MagSafe, parts of the MagSafe spec being donated to Qi wireless charging, because we've seen an explosion of both USB-C and MagSafe compatible accessories in the last couple of years. I think that could really become an interesting new area to accessorize the iPhone with various health and fitness devices that are the type that Apple might not make. That will work better with the iPhone because of the opening up, whether it's like a chest strap for heart rate monitoring or blood glucose monitors for people with diabetes, lots of different things that could be enabled or at least work better than they do today with the opening up.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. I think obviously these things are happening because of regulatory pressure to an extent. But I think it's going to be good for users. And I think, if you're one of those people that has a Pebble pre-order, for example, That's going to be interesting, right? That you will be able to forward your notifications to the Pebble, for example.
Yep.
So these things that are happening, I saw just the other day that the folks at Pebble announced a ring, which is a really. Have you seen this, John? The Index
Not the
01?
Pebble one. I saw the one. Oh yeah. No, I did see that one. Actually, I did. That is kind of interesting.
And I read a little bit about that. So it's this ring that doesn't have a charger. It's going to last you for up to 20 hours of recording.
Okay.
The creator says we think it's gonna last you a few years, and then when it's done, since you cannot charge it, it doesn't have a charging mechanism.
Oh, it
at
just
all.
has a built-in charged up battery that lasts.
It's charged up. They're gonna send it to you. You're gonna use it for a couple of years, up to 15 to 20 hours of recording audio. Because the developer says we foresee, you recording up to 10, 15 seconds at a time. So it's going to last you a couple of years. And then when you're done, you're going to send it back. You're going to recycle it. And I assume you will be able to purchase a new one with a discount or something.
Oh, that's interesting.
Interesting idea. And it's interesting because like that ring, and the Pebble itself, obviously the watch, they should be able to take advantage of these new wireless features that Apple is working on, in theory, especially notification forwarding.
That is very interesting. We haven't seen devices do that where it's just like a single-use battery.
No, it's fascinating idea. Hopefully they really do recycle it, because otherwise it's quite a...
Yeah, I would hope that it's designed in a way that they can't, while you couldn't do it yourself, they could take it apart, put it back together and restore it and maybe sell it that way all over again.
Okay, let me mention one on my list.
Okay.
I think we will start seeing the first demos of Android-based AI agents that can control your phone and your apps. We've seen these demos of computer use for LLMs, and those are LLMs that are using your computer, a desktop computer or a browser. I think somebody will figure out a way to let one of these systems control the phone itself. Maybe it's going to be Google, right? Maybe it's going to be Google Gemini, and you will be able to invoke Google Gemini and actually have Gemini navigate your home screen, create apps, create pages of apps and icons, create widgets. Maybe there's going to be an angle for the agent changing some of your settings, or just in general, like if you're using, I don't know. I'm just thinking that we've seen these demos of computer use, but I think obviously the next frontier is mobile. And mobile is more locked down than a computer. So that's why I think it's going to happen on Android first.
It should make it an easier problem to solve, because there are fewer variables at play as there are on a regular computer.
And we know that these companies have been publishing papers on training large language models on mobile interfaces, right? So, and including Apple, they've published white papers on training LLMs to understand and interact with mobile UIs.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see some movement on that front, not from Apple in 2026, but I think in Android we will see something.
All right. That'd be really interesting. I've got another app prediction for you, Federico. Okay. I think we're going to see more apps along the lines of Google's NotebookLM. And what I mean about that is that, we've talked on and off about some of these APIs that you've been experimenting with, and I'm experimenting with now myself, like from Exa and from Parallel AI and others. And I think that those are the building blocks that are going to allow developers to create new forms of research apps that allow something like NotebookLM, where you can do research, you can store research, you can use an AI to explore that research and combine it in new ways. We haven't seen a lot of that. Google's NotebookLM is quite popular, I know, and I expect that we'll see more imitators. And I think it'll trickle down into the indie scene, because with these APIs available out there, you don't have to be Google to make something that's similar to that, I don't think.
Interesting. I want to see a different take on NotebookLM. That'd be fun. Okay, I think the new Siri with app intents will ship. So the more personalized Siri that they showed off a couple of years ago at WWDC, it'll ship. It'll be real. And Apple will also announce new domains for App Intents. So cast your mind back to WWDC 2024. Apple showed off a vision of a more personalized and contextually aware Siri that never actually shipped, and it was delayed earlier this year. They said it's going to come out in 2026. The latest rumors are saying it's going to happen in 26.4. It's not clear to which extent it's going to happen. Is it going to be powered by an LLM? Is it going to be a chatbot UI in Siri? Is it just going to be Siri plus a white label version of Gemini? We don't know the details, but we know that it's supposed to happen, and I think it will happen. We will have a version of what Apple showed off 2 years ago at this point, with Siri and app integrations with a more conversational flow. On top of that, I think we will go beyond the 12 domains. Domains are basically categories of apps that Apple said, if you're a developer of one of these types of apps, which I will read to you, John, you can integrate with the more personalized Siri. The domains in 2024 were books, browser, camera, file management, journaling, email, photos and video, presentations, reader/document reader, spreadsheet, whiteboard, and word processor. I think we'll see some more specific things like music playback, media playback, for example, is notably absent from this list. I think podcasts are also absent. I think we will see an initial launch of these 12 domains. I could even see Apple saying, actually, we're launching this, but out of the original 12, we're just rolling out 6 for now, with more to come. I can see Apple launching it, but scaling back some of the domains. But at WWDC 26, I think they will announce more domains. And I think this other pick is related. Because of this, more apps will start integrating with Apple Intelligence. We will see even more interest from developers in adopting app intents and sort of mapping their apps features to Apple Intelligence. And I think Apple is going to give access to for those developers to more foundation models. Maybe a new on-device model, but also I think it's time for Apple to let developers freely prompt the model running in private cloud compute.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially if it's going to be the Google one.
Right. No, I can agree with that. And I can get on board with all those predictions too. But I have a spicy take that is related, which is I think we're going to end next year without being able to reproduce the demo in 2024.
Interesting.
I just feel as though this is not necessarily even an issue of pure AI. I just feel like layering this onto Siri is just going to it's going to be hard. Siri is still really not great, and I just think it's going to be a long road before those kind of demos are actually going to work. We'll see. I want them to work. I'm eager for them to work. I just think that Siri, and I also wonder, like, bigger picture, let's aside from the technicalities of it all, are people going to even use Siri to do these things?
That's what I was going to say.
Right, because people are, I set timers, I ask Siri the weather, I have it turn on some lights and turn them off, and that's about it. There's not much beyond that I do. Oh, I add things to my grocery list. Those are the 4 things.
Here's my take. I think Apple is going to ship the conversational, so speech-based, voice-based version of Siri with a large language model in the background and app integrations. But I think until they actually roll out a text-based chatbot, few people will care, because it's inconvenient to have to use, like, you don't use ChatGPT voice mode all the time. It's great when you are in the correct context.
It's just not right. It's just not appropriate in a lot of contexts, right?
Exactly. So I think Apple will launch all of this, but they won't take the world by storm until they actually say, look, fine, here's a Siri chatbot for you. And you can have your conversations. You can pick up a conversation from a few days ago and continue it. You can have your app integrations here. There's going to be a nice UI for each third-party app that you bring into a chat. So that's going to be awesome when it happens. But for the voice mode, I'm like,
Yeah.
Will people care? I don't know.
Yeah. Type to Siri could just be expanded, I suppose, right? So that it has more of a dedicated UI. That would be one way to solve the problem.
I see this all the time. People love chatbots. I see this
Yeah,
with
I
Sylvia,
know.
for example.
Yeah.
She picks up conversations from a few days ago and she continues the same conversation. I know people in my real life
Yeah.
who have a single conversation with ChatGPT and they just talk about anything in there.
The hallucinations just must be out of this world.
Yeah. Yeah, but people do that. People do that. Or maybe they have a couple of different conversations and they just move between those. People just love the idea of having this fake partner where they can just talk about stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think Apple will need to show off some kind of Siri chatbot UI at some point.
Yeah, I agree. And on the voice-driven part of it, I think that for it to really take off with people, there needs to be some kind of hook. Some use case that is super compelling that people try once and they keep doing. And that, because habits are hard to break. And the habits, Siri's been around since 2007, I want to say. It's been around for a long time, and people's habits around it have really hardened, I think.
Yeah. What else do you have on your list?
I got one last one. One that's way, way out in left field, Federico. I'm going to say that Apple is going to make a camera, a dedicated camera. All right, and the reason, yes, they're going to do dedicated camera hardware, and it'll help people who maybe hesitated to get the iPhone Air or would hesitate to get a foldable iPhone justify those purchases if they can have a separate small camera that they can rely on. Now, I think this is a niche audience, and when I think about it hard enough, I think, well, this is probably not going to happen. But I do think that they could do a good camera. I think that they could do a camera that would really, really challenge the likes of Sony and Canon and a bunch of the other major camera manufacturers, primarily through software, both in terms of the processing that we see on the iPhone of images as they're captured, but also in terms of the UI. Camera UIs are not great. The camera world is kind of stuck in a lot of ways in a pre-mobile phone world in terms of their UIs. And I speak from the experience of someone having used Sony cameras, which are especially notorious for having terrible UIs. And I think that Apple, there's room for them to really shake that market up. I just don't know if it's a big enough market to be worth it to them, ultimately.
An Apple camera.
Camera. They've had an Apple camera before. Come on, why not bring it back?
Sure. They should call it iSight. That's a good name.
They should.
My final pick is that we will see... I've been thinking a lot about AI and mobile, and so this last pick is also about that. We will see MCP become something that is bundled into mobile operating systems. I think so far MCP has mostly been a desktop thing or a web-based thing.
Right.
We saw the rumors a few months ago of Apple building in hidden iOS 26 code, sort of like an MCP bridge. I still have this wild card theory that they actually rebuilt their demo from 2 years ago using MCP because they realized that whatever schema they were using was not working. Yeah. So I wouldn't be shocked if all the app integrations with app intents will happen, but it'll actually be backed by MCP under the hood. Yeah. So I think there's going to be something interesting there. And I think in general, we will see. We already have on the App Store some of those apps that let you use on-device models, that let you manually set up MCP servers running inside the app. So they open up like a local host instance, for example. And I just think in general, that seems to me like the next frontier for these things is, okay, fine, we have desktop-based MCP integrations. We have server-based ones. What about mobile? And so I think that's going to be the story. And again, I think Google as an interesting possibility here, as the other major platform, obviously because OpenAI and Anthropic don't have a platform in terms of mobile software. maybe OpenAI will show up something portable next year. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe.
But I think, I could see Apple say the app intents with Siri and these new foundation models, they actually speak MCP. So if you've done the work for LLMs, if you're a developer and you've done the work, it's mostly consistent on iOS and iPadOS and all of the other platforms with the work that you've done elsewhere. So,
that's I think that's a pretty good bet. I still, this kind of goes back to my concerns about Siri and some of the foundational stuff, because I wrote about this for the club a few weeks ago, where one of the things that I wonder about is how is Apple going to deal with things like collisions where you have multiple apps that have actions that are named the same thing. There are I mean, some of that might be solvable through the App Intents API as it is, but there's so many layers of issues with implementing this in a way that's really reliable and robust, starting with voice being just kind of being a really fuzzy way to deal with LLMs, because people tend to speak a lot less precisely than they type a lot of times. And one thing that I've always found interesting about it is that, when you're using a phone to make vocal requests of like ChatGPT or Claude or whatever model, you're right there. You're looking at your phone, your mouth. They can predict within a few inches how close the microphone is to your mouth. Whereas with something like a HomePod, you could be like just passing through your living room and shouting over your shoulder, and there could be a TV on in the background and kids playing. And it could, it's a noisy, imprecise environment that makes all this stuff all that much harder from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think those are some predictions.
Yeah, I think the app ones are going to be the most interesting to watch. I mean, we'll get Siri eventually, and hopefully at some point early next year, we'll see the first fruits of all that work that's being done, and it'll be better than some of the skepticism I have. But I really do think when we saw this going into the Selects Awards, is that we're seeing a resurgence in interest in building apps, and a lot of it is because of new designs like Liquid Glass, but a lot of it is also based around AI and what it can do to enhance existing apps and open doors to build new sorts of apps that we haven't really dreamed of before.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. That's it for App Stories for 2025. We're closing the books on another year. We will be back in 2026 in January, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, you can visit with me and Federico over at MacStories.net. And you can also go to Club MacStories. And if you're not a member, please check it out sometime. Just go to club.macstories.net. You'll find out all the perks there and see what the plans are and the options are. We'd love to have you in the club. And we're also on social media. Federico, he is at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next year, Federico.
Ciao, John, and happy holidays.
You too.